Okay, greetings everyone. My name is Carl, and welcome to part 2 of my discussion of Star Wars: The Old Republic. Last time I discussed the crafting system and some of the shortcomings and some of the crew skill system and some of its positives and shortcomings. Today I will start my discussion on the various classes of the game and their mechanics and their individual storylines. First up, we focus on 2 of the classes for the Galactic Republic faction. There are 2 factions in the game, Galactic Republic and Sith Empire. Each has 4 classes. And these 4 classes each start on one of 2 different worlds, depending on the faction. I'm going to start with the Galactic Republic's, the 2 classes that start in the Galactic Republic world of Tython. These classes are the Jedi Knights and the Jedi Consular. The Jedi Knight is sort of your classic game. Sort of your classic melee class in just about any MMO. The game, if you think of any classic melee class in a game, the knight would be it. He goes around with a lightsaber and slashes things. It slashes and stabs and all that good sword fighting goodness. If you're what's one thing that's fun is that there are advanced classes in the game. Now, you can spec your Jedi Knight one of 2 different ways. You could go for a Guardian, which uses a single lightsaber and is something of a tank unit, though it can also be spec'd for damage. And you can also be a Sentinel, which is more damage, which is pure damage. No matter how you spec it, it's going to be dealing damage in some way. And the Knight storyline is sort of classic. And it starts off with you heading as a Jedi Knight. As a Padawan, getting ready to finish up your trials on Tython. And the Consular, again, you start out as a Padawan heading to Tython to take your trials. The storyline's a little different, but it's still very, very good. The Consular is more of a ranged class. All the Consular's skills involve use of the Force. They can just throw a barrage of small rocks at a target to deal damage over time and also slow the target. And another one of their early skills is the ability to lift up large objects and hurl them at a target. Now, Sentinel advanced classes for the Consular are the Sage and the Shadow. The Shadow is a stealth class, and it's really fun because it gives you because you get a dual-bladed lightsaber. Dual blades, always fun. And the Sage is more a caster class, following the main strengths of the Consular itself. Sages can do even more force power related stuff, and they can also spec as healers. They're always fun. It's fun to play both. It would be fun to play both classes. So, if you want to try something with specialized customizing your classes in any way. If you want to do mystical stuff in any way, shape, or form, you go with either the knight or the consular. Any questions?
No. Who are you asking?
You guys.
We're doing the podcast.
I don't really have any questions in particular.
Any questions or comments about either of the classes that I was talking about?
I want to know why they chose to copy all the class abilities from WoW. If you look at any of the class abilities and you compare them to WoW's class abilities, they're almost exactly the same.
Well, some people think of it as like some people call SWTOR a WoW clone.
It is. If you look directly at the skills that the classes have, they almost are just a direct carbon copy of WoW's class abilities.
Well,
oh my gosh, who wouldn't think it?
What do you say in Star Wars defense?
Well, let's just say that BioWare probably just thought that they were. I'm not quite sure what the appropriate response is, but I have a feeling that BioWare has a reason for doing what they did.
Yeah, it's because WoW's successful and they're just trying to cash in on the same success, which is exactly the reason why nobody's playing the game.
This is supposed to be a podcast.
Yeah, I know, but
We are.
yes, but that is an issue, and that's an issue that a lot of players have with a lot of MMOs, is that they're almost always just copying WoW because WoW is successful, and they don't actually.
I have to say, though, I did enjoy the game. Despite it being a copy of WoW, I found it mildly entertaining, and it kept me occupied for a few hours when I played it.
Yeah, I play it. I play it a lot, partly because of the story, which is really fun. And my main is a Jedi, is a Sentinel. But yeah, it's. I definitely I think the game's pretty fun. Any other questions or comments?
I think I'd enjoy the game more if it was offline only.
Without a subscription fee.
Without the grinding.
I don't really know if a $15 a month single player game would fly with game players.
I don't like to play an MMO that I have to pay for.
Yeah.
But then again, most of them are all like, you have to pay anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think that probably does it for now. Next week, I'll go to the next to the other two classes for the Galactic Republic, the Smuggler and the Vanguard, Smuggler and the Trooper. Until then, this is Carl reminding everyone that with courage, even 1% can become 100%.
Hello there. Name's Ian from Ogre, the organization of gaming, recreation, and education. And this topic is going to be focused on my favorite games, seeing as how it's a little bit of difficulty explaining more with the Kingdom Hearts thing, sadly. Sorry folks, you'll have to wait on that. Anyway, this topic's going to be about my personal favorite games and why. I can't give an accurate top 5 list because 1, I can't be arsed, and 2, it's just... I hate having to list them all down. Just list all of them. Christ. Anyway, shut up, both of you.
I'm laughing at something else.
Yes.
Anyway, one of my personal favorite games is Borderlands, as was I think I mentioned it before. Anyway, Borderlands happens to be one of my favorite games because it is a interesting hybrid of first-person shooter and role-playing game, which is a rather is a really nice combination, and I love how it's not cutscene heavy like Kingdom Hearts. It doesn't break the flow of the game, and more importantly, it's just a complete blast to play. Just like, how can you deny loving this game, loving a game that has that allows you to pick a bajillion guns? I mean, come on.
That's in the advertisement. He's not just exaggerating.
Anyway, another of my favorite games is the Uncharted series, which is really, really beautiful. The scenery is just absolutely gorgeous. The character models are nicely designed. The soundtrack is excellent. Just almost everything about Uncharted is excellent, except for the controls, which are a hassle just to deal with, quite honestly. Another of my favorite games is the Assassin's Creed series. Well, more like 2, excluding Brotherhood and Revelations, because, despite the guards being really, really dim-witted, it's a really nice stealth-y game. It's set in beautiful ancient historical settings, and there's a plethora of different ways you can kill your enemies, which is always fun. Any questions? Any questions, guys? Because I've kind of hit the 3-minute. Nothing? Anyone?
What do you enjoy about Assassin's Creed?
What do I enjoy about it? Well, what I enjoy about it is, for one, it's the scenery. The scenery is always lovely. But one thing I really liked about it is that there's the number of towns number of places you could explore, which they sadly nixed from Brotherhood and Revelations. But Brotherhood and Revelations it's really just Assassin's Creed 2 over and over again, and that's why they didn't deliver the same it didn't feel as fun as it was with the second game. It just really didn't. It just felt shallow. Makes me wonder what they'll do for the third game.
How did the second one compare to the first one?
The second one? Second one, I've never played the first game.
Okay.
I've played the second and Revelations. That's all I've played of the Assassin's Creed series.
Is Brotherhood not in the official timeline?
It's actually part of the Assassin's Creed canon.
But is it like a numbered series? Because
no, it is not a numbered series. Oh, okay. It is basically just more of Ezio faffing about.
So when you said the third one, they made more than 3.
Okay.
But it's
an official number 3, not Brotherhood or Revelations, because those are just. It's basically just, again, Ezio faffing about.
So that's like 5, right?
Technically, the Brotherhood and Revelations, from what I understand, could be considered expansions to 2.
Yes.
Or 2A and 2B.
Should really name these better.
Yes, they really, really should. Any more questions, guys?
I think.
All right. Well, that's my meager portion of the podcast. I'm sorry for all you folks out there who
were forced to listen to this.
This has been Ian, signing out.
Hello, this is Grant Curtis, and we are Ogre, and here we're going to have a group discussion, and David Baldwin is going to start us off with his topic that he feels very strongly about.
Modern gaming and the lack of innovation. Modern games, for the most part, copy something else that has been done before because it works. They keep the same ideas and maybe change a little bit and re-release it with nicer graphics, maybe some new technology. Nothing that really changes the way that the game works. People play these games and they pay a lot of money for them, but they're really not getting a new experience. It's the same thing. You're walking down a hallway that looks a little different, shooting the same bad guys. You run out from various spots, something like that. Call of Duty hasn't changed much in the last 3 or 4 games, maybe later than that. I feel the same way about most other first-person shooters, like the Halo games, like the Battlefield franchise. I don't play those kind of games anymore because of the lack of innovation. I really like the first Halo, though. But since then, it seems kind of like a recycle.
Yeah, it's like
No,
any hits the shields just doesn't recharge.
Was he talking, or?
Yeah, he was saying something
Not
about
sure if we were gonna.
a mechanic.
What do you think about that, David?
Well, Halo, in terms of the shield, it would recharge, but it would go down and you would have like body points. But in later games, you ended up with it just being the shield, so that once it was down, you're dead.
Like in OTST or whatever it was called?
ODST.
ODST, yeah, that one.
Yeah, but it was like that in Halo 3, and I'm not sure about Halo 2.
I guess I just felt like I'm still fighting these people that run out, and there wasn't any kind of new experience. You're just shooting people and driving trucks around. I want something interesting, like
fighting a giant octopus or something.
Well, no, not
It's
like
been done
that.
before too.
Yeah,
I'll take what I can get.
like perhaps a branching storyline with multiple endings. I mean, even though that is fairly common now.
Well, no, it's common, but they don't do it correctly. Like
No.
BioWare and their Mass Effect series touts it around, but the games still always end in the same way. It's just minor differences.
If I do something at the beginning, I want that to change something at the end. And that way you can't go back and push a different button like in the new Deus Ex, where you had 3 buttons at the end and a different button in a different room that blew everything up, and you could just push one of these 3 buttons or walk and push the other one. And it just felt really contrived, like, oh, here's your options. No, I wanted it to happen in the game, depending on how I made my choices, depending on what I did and what missions I accomplished. That should change the ending, not what button I push at the end. But they don't want to punish people. They don't want anyone to feel like they can't just go back and be instantly gratified with the other ending.
I think Final Fantasy X-2 didn't do too bad of a job putting that in.
How did it work in that game?
That game, the first part that I liked about it, you couldn't complete the game a first run through.
That's awesome.
Because the first run through, there were just some decisions you couldn't do 2 of. You know, can't be in 2 places at one time, or etc. But they gave the option when you beat the game successive times for a new game plus, you can't progress, but you re-go through the game to cover lost material. That way you had to go through the game, I think it was like 3 or 4 times to get the quote-unquote perfect ending. They had like 4 different endings, depending on your progress.
That's pretty cool. The Metal Gear series does a lot of really innovative stuff that I like. I haven't played them that much, but one of them you had to find the code for a radio, and it was on the back of the case of the disc, which I thought was really cool.
That was just a way of doing DRM.
But it was
Because if you
still
didn't have the
easy.
case, like back then they didn't have the internet, so you couldn't figure out how to progress past that point unless you actually had the game case.
But it was cool.
It was.
I thought that kind of thing is cool. Like they wouldn't do that now. They wouldn't make you have to write stuff down. Like some of those old games, you had to write down like the galactic addresses for the different stars, or you'd never find them. You know, stuff like that, where you actually had to have a pad of paper out to write down notes, or else you would never be able to finish the game.
Of course, nowadays it's just about convenience.
Exactly. It's too much about convenience.
It's not enough about challenge anymore, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you don't have to think as much. You just go out and grind on something for a while until you get a new stat point.
Like I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I'm farming red Chaos drives in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the GameCube.
It just feels like a waste of time to me.
I like that farming mechanic. Speaking of Metal Gear and the Chow things, it's pretty similar. You go out into battle on the Metal Gear game, the newer ones, Peace Walker and Portable Ops to a lesser extent, but more in Peace Walker, which is a newer game. you go out, you capture soldiers, you send them to your base, and then they eventually end up joining you, and you search for these stronger and stronger soldiers to build up your army, and you capture tanks and parts from discarded giant robots, things like that, to make you stronger, and that's all farming. You have to go through the same levels, the same maps, over and over again.
Should we explain
to
what
get-
farming is?
That's what it is.
Yeah, I am explaining.
That is
it.
exactly what it is. It's going.
Going through the same things over and over again to like farm.
To gather stuff.
Yes.
Whether it be experience points that level up your characters, make them stronger, money, characters in the case of, or even Pokemon. You grind for Pokemon. You like. So you'll have to edit that part out. In Pokemon and the competitive scene, players will farm for Pokemon with really good stats because there's a lot of hidden variables that you can't expose. Things like that are called EVs or IVs, which you do not know until you until the Pokemon grows up. So usually they'll farm a bunch of Pokemon and train them all with a way to give them all XP and get see if their IVs are high. If their IVs aren't high, then they're going to go back and farm for more Pokemon.
But back to Peace Walker. You do that over and over again. And
I'm sorry. I didn't
IVs.
define what IVs are. IVs are individual values, and each Pokemon has an individual value for each statistic. So I think they range from 0 to 31, and they represent the Pokemon's individual strength in whatever attribute. So health, attack, defense, speed, special attack, and special defense each have their own IV. And there's not a way to calculate them, I think, until level 50, and that's only if you also know the effort values for that Pokemon. And those are actually gained after you start battling with that Pokemon. And so you have to keep track of those and farm for the number of Pokemon with the best IVs that you can in order to get the best competitive Pokemon.
Do you think farming is a good gameplay mechanic?
I think it's just a cheap way to make games longer. And we know that, so that's why we put RPG elements into a lot of games, is because people like it. It makes them spend a lot of time on games.
I like it to an extent. In Peace Walker, you do that, you farm. It's a co-op game, so I get on with my friend from Indiana, and we play the game together. We can spend hundreds of hours playing it and getting everything to completion, which means doing things over and over again to level up everything as much as you possibly can, and that provides a lot of fun for us. There's always something to go back to. Some of it's partly the same, but you're still having fun. I've never gotten bored doing these things over and over again, just in this case. I'm sure if it was
Call of Duty or something where you have to be prestige and then you level up from 1 to 85 again, over and over and over and over and over.
Maybe it's because I like the game, but I'm never never bored of that game, and I can spend hundreds of hours on it. Rather, if I just did it once, maybe 10 hours or something.
And you play this game with other people?
Yeah, it's online. Play with my friend from Indiana.
Your only friend.
That's not very
I'm
nice.
sorry.
I thought we were all friends here.
Yeah. You don't want to be my friend?
I was just...
Get out of this club. So I like farming to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
There's some games all about farming, like Farmville.
Basically.
Good one.
If I played it, maybe I might like it, but I don't. I have too much dignity
To play Facebook
ever
games.
play Farmville.
We have too much dignity as gamers.
Yes.
Oh man, my mother's side of the family just can't leave it alone.
I don't know, is there such a thing as dignity when you're a gamer?
Yes,
I think so.
Not playing and overly enjoying games that aren't very deep, that don't have deep gameplay or require a lot of skill to play, I think, is part of our dignity.
What game would you say is a model of deepness in gameplay?
PSX?
Well,
The old
depends, like what type of gameplay, because there's fighting games, and even the most basic fighting game, you can still get completely destroyed by somebody even if you have no skill. I mean, if somebody can get good enough at a game like that, yeah. But when it's a game where everyone can play it at the highest level despite not having put like 50 hours into the game already or been playing games their whole life, I think that would qualify.
And that's what you mean by depth, or that is depth?
Yeah, you'd have to put time in order to understand the game enough to be competitive.
What about games that don't have a competitive aspect to them at all?
Depends on what kind. If it's something to challenge yourself, like a single player or a puzzle game that has challenging puzzles, then that's good. But if it's something that doesn't offer a challenge, it's just to be there, like Farmville. Like, you just can play it every day, and it doesn't matter if you do good or bad. Because the game itself really doesn't have any metric to keep track of it besides the experience points. And those are just, you gain it by playing it over a long period of time. It's not that you actually have to get good at the game.
I don't like Farmville. I don't like Facebook games in general. I just don't. They're boring.
It's just a grind. You can't actually get good at the game. Well, you can understand some of the mechanics in the game, but you can't really get good. It's beyond matching whatever you do up to your own life schedule, so you can go back after an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and harvest the crops that you planted. That's something that anybody can do. But, for example, with Tribes Ascend, or any Tribes game really, not everyone can learn to ski very well, so, not everyone's going to be that amazing flag capper.
Skiing was originally a glitch, wasn't it?
Yep.
But it became a gameplay mechanic.
That's usually how it works.
Which is very cool.
Yeah. Accidental discovery.
Another glitch that eventually worked its way into the mainstream of a game was in this one game called Super Robot Wars Original Generation.
Never heard of it.
Well,
what is it?
It's a tactical RPG with giant robots. And basically, if you know of Advance Wars, it plays somewhat similarly, except you don't create units you're not constantly creating units. You have a set amount that you start with, and you have to make them last.
What's this glitch?
Well,
isn't there a PSP game sort of like that?
Just go into the glitch. That's what we were on the topic of.
There's this one character named Els. There's this one character who starts out as a bad guy. Thus, his music as a boss theme overrides normal character themes when you fight him. However, near the end of the game, he becomes a playable character. Now, normally his music would return to normal music, so boss music would override it. However, this is where the glitch comes in. The glitch meant that they did not. The glitch meant that even though it gained normal music status, it also kept its boss music status.
So every fight that you had him in your party or on the field, it would change the music.
Well, the music only changed when you had him engage. You had him engage a target.
Oh.
When you had one of your characters engage a target, it would override the map music until the next turn. And if you engage the boss character, it would override. You'd override that. You'd override the. It would even override your music.
Yeah.
And with this guy, once you got him on your team, he could override boss music.
So what's you said that that's a glitch that became a common thing.
Well, people liked it so much that in future games, his music was always set to override everything.
Just in that series, though, not in general?
Yeah, just in that series.
Oh, I have something for in general. Well,
but still, whenever he showed up, it's what's known. Because his theme was named Tromb, it became known as a Tromb. This kind of thing became known as a Tromb override.
I've never heard of that before, but I've...
Maybe we should TV tropes it and look it up.
Yes. and spend a week there.
Yeah.
I have a thing, similar glitch that became a mechanic. Well, actually, I have a beef with some of these things, but I'll get into that later. But Space Invaders, the original, you know how after you shoot all the ships, they seem to get faster. That's actually not intended. That is because the processor was bogged down with all those ships moving at once. So as you destroyed those ships, it freed off the processor. So the ships appeared to be going faster, when really that was never in the code. But they should have thought of that.
Delta time, right?
Yeah, it would change with the time that's elapsed on the system. So
they didn't.
But they didn't have a way to accurately keep track of time in those days. Everything happened as fast as they could get it to happen because they had that little of CPU power to use.
What about rocket jumping?
That's a glitch too. That was just because rockets wouldn't one-shot people in games, but they'd offer explosive force and push people away from the blast.
Rocket jumping, you shoot at your feet and jump, and that propels you forward.
Yes.
Forward or up, and in general, it's a way to get around a lot of levels in games.
And they start implementing that more as a mechanic later on?
Because it's not realistic, and people only care about realism, apparently, in games.
They do that in Team Fortress 2. That's an intentional thing.
But that's because Team Fortress 2 is treated like a game and not like a battle simulator.
What games...
Modern Warfare, you can't shoot at your legs, you kill yourself because all explosions one-shot people, so... If they're point blank.
Have a semblance of realism anyways. But
I know, they aim for realism, but they really aren't very realistic at all, especially if you count how people play the games. I mean, quick scoping and stuff, no, that's not how people use sniper rifles in real life.
Well,
IRL.
Everything is CQB in those games, basically.
Yeah, there's no real actual engagements. Everyone's all in the same, 10 square feet of the map, basically.
Another thing, combos in fighting games was allegedly originally unintended. You hit someone, you stun them, and then you hit them again while they're stunned, and they can't do anything about it, is the definition of a combo in fighting games. I hate that, because I hate just sitting there and watching my character die while I can't do anything about it. But that's another matter. But that's an unintended thing. You were never supposed to do that in fighting games, but people liked it, and it became a thing, regrettably.
Regrettably?
I hate fighting games because of that. I hate playing fighting games online.
Yeah, when everyone
knows
spams moves.
Yeah, like when you can't look over the side and see what they're about to do.
I never do that in real life.
Sure you don't.
It takes
too much skill.
It takes too little time. Well, if you're looking over there, he's already done the move because.
Oh yeah, but just at least if you can see their face and see what they're, if they're pissed off and they're going to try something, or if they're not paying attention to what you're doing.
I don't know about that, but I don't like playing fighting games online. Everyone knows everything, and I don't. Spend hours memorizing all the combos.
Only for you to get your ass kicked by somebody who button mashes.
You just wasted less time in your life doing something meaningless than they did.
Yes.
Well, you technically wasted the same amount of time. You just didn't win.
Wait, but if they invested thousands of hours learning to do these ridiculous combos and he didn't, then you win because you have more time that you spent doing something productive, maybe, hopefully.
Maybe.
And that makes me feel a little better.
Well, that's the point.
A little better.
Just a little.
But I could still beat everyone here at fighting games because I bring the fighting games. Except Mortal Kombat, because he brought Mortal Kombat. And he wins at Mortal Kombat.
That's because I spent more time on it than
Yes.
any of you. Therefore making me elite, if you will. How much I hate to use that.
If we're going to continue with the topic of glitches in games, one game had a huge a number of glitches that were actually all kept as a part of the game itself once they were discovered. Yes, Guns. Guns the Duel is a online third-person shooter made by a Korean game company called Mayet, and right now I think IJJI is serving their game, and just the entire game is based off of something called K-styling, which is just a series of glitches that you can perform to do incredibly crazy things in the game. So The easiest one to describe is probably the wall jump glitch. So in the game, if you jump when you're in air next to a wall, you can wall jump, and that just basically pushes you away from the wall and pushes you upward. But one of the things with the animations in that game is if you had a sword out or another weapon, you could cancel that animation by attacking. And what that would do is that would return your state to the mid-air swing, which would allow you to dash. And then you could dash against the wall and jump off of it again, and repeat the thing up the entire wall. And that was one thing that they kept. They even designed a few maps around that glitch, most notably the staircase, which is just a huge a bunch of staircases out in the middle of nowhere in the sky. And the only way to climb up some of the towers, I think they had just a few towers that didn't even have stairs, was to wall jump up the side of them and continuously slash, dash towards the wall, jump off, slash, dash towards the wall and jump off over and over and over. There's a bunch of other glitches, from the butterfly to reload canceling. That actually, reload canceling is used to increase the fire speed of weapons, believe it or not. Or actually, just switching weapons does that, but people like to make it stylish and reload in between each switch as well. So there's a number of glitches in that game, and the game's actually more fun, I think, because of the glitches than it is without them. They kind of make the game what it is and make it unique. And I think that's why people are still actually playing the game instead of it being dead, like a lot of other games.
But all the people who play the game are a bunch of dirty glitchers and cheaters, because they use these glitches to win, since the game is based around it.
But that's just metagame. It's not. Like, the game was actually, once they started designing maps with the glitches in mind, I think that the glitches were no longer glitches and they were just part of the game.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
think-
have to go with John on that one.
I don't think a developer has the right to say, no, this isn't a glitch, this is an intended feature. How dare they?
But they do, and I think their game's better for it, if anything.
I think you're all a bunch of cheaters.
Or did you really hate it that much when you played? Or
No, I played it. I liked it.
Just because there's still glitches.
We're all glitches. Oh, come on. We've all been guilty of it.
You are.
Glitches and cheating. The first Red faction for the PC, there became official mod servers, and basically it was who can write the best cheat, package, because you could edit the stats and things, and if you knew a lot about how the game was coded and how the scripts worked for it, you could write in your own scripts, and if you knew the proper things to tweak, you could do certain things to your character, like change their animations, which would change the way that they move, and you could move around the level a lot faster that way, or you could change the fire rate on weapons and stuff like that, and it became sort of certain servers where who can write the best mod for their characters so that they can win.
Wait, you could actually load mods locally? You didn't have to load them across everyone?
No, a lot of the stuff was done client side, like character positions, fire rates, ammo counts, all that stuff, the animations that you were using. I guess a lot of that was done client side in such a way that it wouldn't matter if the server had it or not, you could still sort of cheat. Mostly fire rate and movement stuff. But you could enable no clipping for your character if you knew how, and still interact with people and shoot them. And change the explosion radius on certain weapons, so you can pretty much remove the entire map from the game if you knew how.
You removed the whole map?
Yeah, because in Red Faction you could actually destroy pieces of the terrain, and if you built that radius to be ridiculous, you could make a crater that was larger than the map, and then the map would basically be gone except for any non-destructible objects.
But the entire terrain would be unwalkable.
And at that point, it became a bit ridiculous.
But if everyone already had no clip, just because we haven't defined what no clip is, let people know. No clipping is referred to, or is the name of basically a console command, usually used to debug games, that often is left in for single-player games, that allows your character to move through walls or fly around and move through walls as well. So it's basically super mobility.
Halo 3 had a mode where you could actually create a custom layout for a map, like placing strategic items like weapons and
Forge mode, I think it was.
yeah, Forge
But
mode.
that's not really a map editor in the sense. Do they have a no-clip thing with it, or?
I think you like flew around on little. No, I don't think you could go through the walls and things like that. No,
not really.
you could.
No, I think you could fly though.
Yeah, you could fly. That's how you would, because you would have to make a map and navigate in 3D space, so you would have to fly.
Gary's mod also has a mod for it that sort of has developed a gameplay around who can write the best code for it, and that's wire mod.
Mm-hmm.
And using wire mod, you can program basically circuits in the game to do things, like protect you from inbound projectiles by spawning props in the way of them, and stuff like that, and applying force to other props to shoot them back at the player who's trying to kill you, and things like that. So there's a lot of cool stuff around that.
Is Gary's mod more of a game or a tool, or?
It's a game that came from Half-Life. Originally it was a modification for Half-Life, but now it's its own game. It's a game, it's a sandbox game. You can place props and different objects and create contraptions, and there are game modes for it, and all of that. I wouldn't consider it a tool.
All I've seen about Gary's mod is that they make funny videos from the internet from them. So
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what it can actually do and what you can actually do with it. How do you play Gary's mod?
Well, it depends on the server. There are role-play servers where people just sort of pretend to live a virtual life, and there are servers where you build tanks and other contraptions and fight each other. There are just servers where people build objects, and that's all you do. And there's a thing called space build, where you have to build a spaceship and travel to other planets and maybe build a base there, and you have to build life support systems to keep yourself alive while you travel to other planets.
What game?
Gary's mod.
Oh.
Is this
There's some other game modes like Fort Wars and stuff like that people play.
elevator source?
Elevator Source. What's that?
It's an elevator
we're talking
simulator.
about that, yes.
Yeah. That's literally all it is, and it's basically a mod for Gary's mod.
What about?
Weird.
Has anybody played the Stanley Parable?
What's that?
Oh, it's no, it's one of them Half-Life 2 mods, but it's. I saw some YouTube videos on it. It was actually really, really interesting, cause like, I don't know how to describe it. I really don't.
Use words.
Yeah.
Shut up. I'm trying to use words to describe it.
What genre is it?
It's a. I don't know what kind of genre it is. It's basically where like your entire adventure is narrated, and
I think I know what you're talking about. Is it the one where you start off and you're like, the narrator says, and the player goes through the right door? And
Yes,
you go,
yes, that's exactly what
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
talking about.
Yeah. So that did Bastion copy from them, or did it come after Bastion?
I think it came before
Before.
Bastion.
Before Bastion, yeah.
So do you do what the narrator says to play the game, or do you...
You know, you can
Nope.
you can do other things. You can defy the narrator to get 6 different endings. Or you can go along with what the narrator says and get the best ending. Or you can just completely mess everything up and die.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it really is. They don't have much else to discuss.
Do you have any more
So-
rant about game mechanics in modern games?
I do. I hate that they advertise stuff as being realistic, or like for Battlefield 3, what does the ad say? Is it real life or Battlefield 3? I think is one of their taglines for
Yeah.
their ads. And I just found that insulting, because anyone who's actually fired a gun or knows anything about guns knows that the guns in Battlefield 3 in no way reflect how real guns work. You can't run and jump through obstacles like that and shoot people in the head while
Wasn't
doing all
that
that crap.
intentional though?
Absolutely, it's intentional. They want it to be fast-paced and action-oriented to give people instant gratification. Whereas real combat, there's a lot of boring walking around, and then it gets really exciting for a very short period of time, and then you either die or you win, and then it's boring for a long time again. And that doesn't make for, I guess, a good action game. If if you want to play a simulator, it can work.
You have Arma. That's
Arma
actually a
is-
pretty good simulator.
I love Arma.
Project Reality, the mod
Yes.
for it, makes it incredibly very close to what real squads do out in the field.
Exactly. That would be a realistic game, I guess. Whereas Battlefield 3 is much more of an action game, and I find it insulting that they advertise it as realistic.
Yeah.
And that the 308 sniper rifle does 50-something damage, and the 308 battle rifle that's designed to be more like an assault rifle does like 35 damage, is just ridiculous, because it's using the same cartridge out of the same length of barrel and doing vastly different damages. It makes no sense to me.
On that subject, a game called, what is it, Operation Flashpoint Dragon Rising for the
Arma.
PS3. Yeah, it's different from Arma.
Oh, it's
Dragon
different.
Rising was fun, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
Flashpoint, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking,
I like that
for
one.
some reason I was thinking it was the same, but
It
completely
was at one point the same people were making Arma and
Yeah.
Flashpoint, but then they split off.
Yeah.
But about that game, it's interesting that you say the realness of the weapons and things like that, because it's understandable why they did it that way
To balance it.
from a
of course.
gameplay perspective. But on the other hand, it's not very fun. If they were to do that, what you said in real life, for example, the online games and Flashpoint Dragon Rising, you would have one player go on the other side of the map, up a hill somewhere, like 1,000 meters away from everyone else, and just snipe and just one-hit kill everybody else in the game. And there's almost nothing you could do about it.
In Arma, all the guns are reflections of their real-world counterparts. And usually when someone does that, you go get a tank and go hunting for them. And it can be quite enjoyable to hunt snipers. I've actually had most fun, I think, hunting snipers in situations like that.
But do they actually use tanks for anti-snipers?
You can, yeah, if there's a sniper.
No, I mean in like
Oh,
in real life.
If there's a sniper in a building in real life, they'll hit it with a tank.
Well, yeah, but I
sometimes.
mean out in
Yeah.
the field, if they're just like
Or that, or armored personnel carriers, because it protects your guys. That's like,
Yeah.
the purpose of that kind of vehicle is so that you can move around the battlefield without being exposed to infantry fire like that. Or you call in an airstrike on their suspected position, which is kind of fun too.
I like actually in tribes. There's you can call in an inventory station drop right on top of a sniper, and it'll just destroy them as it lands on them. It's fun as hell to do that.
Games that let you call in airstrikes are awesome.
Well, you can call in airstrikes too, but you can call in a inventory station, and it'll drop a mobile inventory station that you can use to change classes and refill your ammo, and it'll just drop it right on top of the sniper.
So, Grant, with what you were saying, is this a problem that happened with the Operation Flashpoint Dragon Rising?
Yes, it was a problem with the balance in the game, and
Okay.
it was just the design of the game. They didn't really do that map well. There was no possible way to get at that sniper if you let him set up.
Could you shoot him with your own sniper rifle from someplace?
You could do that, but it's very hard to because he's on the apex of a hill, and you're not. There's no hill on your side of the map,
Okay.
but there's a hill on his side of the map, and he will get up on that hill 1,000 meters away and like 300 meters up.
But if that was the realistic bullet fly time and stuff like that.
Yes, you would have to account for distance drop, and to a point it was difficult
So it sounds like
for
it
that
takes a
sniper.
lot of skill to actually hit someone at that range consistently while they're running around trying to avoid you.
Not really, because it's the thing that everyone learns, that everyone wants to be a sniper, and everyone learns that the moment they get online. There's almost no other way to play that game online
I know.
on that map. There are other maps, and there are more balanced. There are tanks, which you said you could use that tactic.
Do they have a full complement of vehicles in that game, like APCs and tanks and trucks and everything else? Or
In the game, yes, but in that map, it's just this one map that has this problem, and that illustrates the problem of having realistic.
Yeah, I guess it can be a lot more work to balance a game if you make the weapons realistic.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of that balance problem might come from people's lack of teamwork too, that you don't find people spontaneously working well as a coherent squad in a multiplayer first-person shooter. Usually everyone wants to run off and do their own thing and be a sniper, like you said, rather than be part of a vehicle crew or coordinate with an airplane in the air so that you can drop a bomb on somebody.
if you look at a lot of competitive gameplay, people who play competitively, play in teams, are much more coordinated than any pug is.
Oh, absolutely.
And just so we know what pugs are, pugs pickup groups used to refer to just any public server
Really cold in here.
that people can just join and play in.
Mhm. One thing about Arma I found is that the level of maturity from the players and the way that people do work together, because I do play Arma,
Mhm.
it's pretty impressive on some
But
servers.
then again, the Arma isn't one of those blockbuster games.
No, it's not.
Definitely more of a niche game.
But last time I played it, there was people acting as air traffic controllers to call in airstrikes on positions and coordinating with ground teams, and
Mhm.
it was really quite impressive level of coordination that they had gotten spontaneously from a group of people.
Yeah, but that happens because of the average level of maturity of the player base. The same thing's not going to happen in Call of Duty.
You're probably right.
And that's just because of who's playing the game.
But I find that kind of thing much more satisfying than, say, Call of Duty. Even if I sit in an A-10 for 15 minutes and I don't do it much except drop a couple laser-guided bombs, I find that more enjoyable and working with other people. I guess because it's a simulation than running around, scope shooting people or whatever.
But it's the whole thing about instant gratification. That's what the majority of players are looking for.
Yes. And I'm not, so
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't fit well with modern games. Well, most of them, unless they're innovative and not blockbuster titles.
I hate how they keep using the word innovation, but yet none of the games actually have very much innovation in them.
Yeah.
That's a real problem, and then they always use it to describe modern games.
It's like false advertising.
Not false advertising, they just don't know what the word means.
That was kind of a joke.
Haha.
Well,
Being kind of serious here, though.
So, okay, yes, I know.
Was
I don't... Do all podcasts really have to be so
not they're serious at times.
what games have you played that you found to be innovative?
Like really innovative, actually doing stuff that's kind of new ideas instead of just putting new ideas that people have already had together.
Or implementing not so common gameplay mechanics.
Like, I think Borderlands kind of does that pretty nice with the elemental weapons.
No, that's been done. Even Diablo has elemental weapons.
Well, I mean,
That's the game that it's based.
Borderlands
But
is
it's just
fun.
this is what I'm talking about. The difference between innovation and just putting ideas that people have already used together is Diablo. Even then, the idea of elemental weapons has already been around in previous games and tabletop RPGs. You've had swords of fire, swords of ice, swords of lightning, swords of wind, swords of whatever. Diablo even had weapons that had elemental effects. And then with Borderlands, they just took the idea of guns and took the idea of elemental effects and put the two together. Ratchet & Clank was a PS2 game that had elemental weapons in it. And it was a third-person shooter, but they still had that idea that you'd have weapons that froze people or that burnt people. That's always been an idea, that were just basically guns shooting in dysentery or explosive or whatever rounds. And that idea's been around. There haven't been very many new ideas recently. Very few. Very, very few. Even Tribes Ascend, which is a reboot of the Star Siege Tribes series, doesn't do very much new. They just take a lot of stuff that makes games better and choose ideas that complement each other. So they haven't really had very many new ideas or new map layouts. They have stuff like choke points that they use to design maps with, and that idea has been around since multiplayer gaming has, actually had attention paid to it.
Speaking of innovation, there's one recent one that caught me by surprise, referring to the Uncharted for Vita.
Oh,
At
Golden
one-
Abyss?
Yeah. At one of the points, you have to reveal some light-sensitive text on an old piece of paper to try and find one of the tunes you're looking for. Not tune, one of them. But the idea was it uses the rear camera. You need to hold it up to a light, being light-sensitive, the ink being light-sensitive, versus rubbing on it or doing some controls. You needed a bright light to hold it up to.
So it had some interesting puzzle mechanics.
Yeah.
But
for charcoal rubbing, this has been used, but on the touch screen.
Mm-hmm.
But versus like augmented reality is one thing they've been talking about with the Vita, but that caught me by surprise. It says it's light sensitive. The paper doesn't tell you right there, hold this up to a light. You just figure out, well, light sensitive, and there's no button controls for it. What can you do?
I think that games are great when they're innovative, but I don't think they necessarily have to be completely innovative. I think I could be happy with them just using non-stale gameplay mechanics and interesting ideas that don't get used every day, like puzzles involving things like that.
But there was a puzzle in I forget the Zelda game on the DS, the Phantom something.
Train?
No, not Spirit Tracks.
Hourglass?
Phantom Hourglass. And there was a puzzle where you have a map on the bottom half and a map on the top half, and one of the maps is marked somewhere, and it doesn't tell you to do this, but what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to close the DS system, and that puts the two screens together, and then you're supposed to open it back up. And it transfers a mark from one map onto the other map. And that, on a system that's been out for a while, this came out like way after the system has been out for a while. And having something like that, not used in very many, I can't think of a single other game that did something like that up until this one.
I can.
What game?
Hotel Dusk, Room 201 or something like that.
Did they actually have a prompt for it?
No prompt for it. You just had to figure it out. There was this one scene where you were supposed to give CPR to a girl, and after you tapped on her to do the chest compressions, it just changed to the scene with like your face on the top and her face on the bottom. You're like, oh my god, she's having a heart attack. What do? I don't know. Close it. And then,
well, but that's much more obvious too than just something with a map on each side. I think, at least, that it's more obvious. But it wasn't an obvious solution, and it wasn't really something that has been, like, that you're aware of from the packaging. So I don't think that innovation's always a good thing. You can have a lot of backwards things that get tried when you try to innovate, and that just don't work. Just don't plain work at all.
Like, do you think the map thing worked?
No, I think that was a part that a lot of people hit and they just stopped playing because they didn't know. There was no way that the game hinted at for you to figure it out on your own. You just happened to you would have to stumble upon it by chance, by closing your system at that point and doing it.
If more games did stuff like that, people might be more inclined to think outside the box when it comes to solving puzzles on their game.
Yes, but then it would always be defined by what the system can do. I don't think if the DS had the thing where you could close it, that would have entered into puzzles being designed for it.
What about like the Metal Gear series where you had to unplug your controller and move it to a different port to beat the one boss?
That was something that they tried, and it's a cool thing, but it didn't really, it's not really a thing that... I mean, if they do it once, and it stumps you really good. But every other time you go back to it, you already know what to do, so it's not a puzzle anymore.
Yeah.
And they also, I think, hinted at it more in Metal Gear Solid, or at least gave the player some way to figure it out. That's good puzzle design. Just dropping some random feature of the system in to solve a puzzle is not usually good design, because not every player, actually very few players, are going to figure it out easily. A lot of players will just become frustrated with it.
Well, relating to that, one innovation, again referring to Uncharted for Vita, a few of the puzzles you need to wipe off some of the dust or dirt from recovered artifact, but beyond using the analog stick, some of them you would use the rear touchpad to rotate something to get at an angle to rub off one particular spot or another. So it's sort of using the hardware to its advantage, lacking in controls.
Yeah, but then that's just because they probably had an idea for the puzzle and were like, how do we design this puzzle with these constraints? If you just had, like, let's say you had the same thing on a PlayStation 2 and you didn't have a touchscreen, you'd probably use one to move a cursor to rub stuff off of the object, and the other stick would still rotate the object. The puzzle itself would not be very different. It'd just be how you do it.
that sort of hardware things are always gimmicky.
Yeah.
When the PlayStation 3 first came out, and they had the 6-axis control where you could tilt the controller and it would register it in the game, and you could do different things based on that. And some of the first games for the PS3 that came out used that feature and tried to use it well. I don't think, for the most part, they all failed. It was all, I don't want to have to waggle this controller around because it's kind of unwieldy. You have to use 2 hands to do it, and you're busy pressing buttons and stuff. Nowadays, no one uses the 6-axis motion controls. In any of the last 10 games I've played for the PlayStation 3.
There's one at the launch I thought was beneficial with Resistance playing online. You tilted for either the leaderboard or the map.
I didn't know that. Well, I didn't have that game, so.
What's 6-axis
Cool.
control?
You tilt the controller.
It's the PlayStation 3 controller. It was the name of it.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it was the motion controls. Just that's what people refer to it as, a 6-axis. So.
Is that the thing that looks a lot kind of like the Wiimote, and it's got the round ball in the end?
No,
of the
no.
glove?
That's a move.
The PS3 remote itself has
Oh,
motion
okay.
sensors in it.
Also, similarly gimmicky. Everyone's trying to get him on the Wii train, and everyone's coming out with a motion controller. Everyone already did.
Like the PlayStation Move.
The PlayStation Move is what we're talking about, and it's not.
And Xbox Connect.
I think the Kinect was completely different, though, because it was a camera that tracked you using an infrared grid.
I think it's still not a very good idea. I mean, a lot of the games that use it, it's really hard to tell if what you're doing is correct. And with a lot of other games that use controllers or keyboard and mouse, you know exactly if what you're doing is correct.
Is pretty good. Red Steel 2 is pretty good.
But for the Wii.
But for the Wii, I'm saying for Kinect.
Oh.
He's just mad because I beat him at Dance Central.
No, I'm not mad because of that. It's like, not just that game, the Fruit Ninja game. While Fruit Ninja did a better job of it, putting something on the screen to show you where you were, in the space that the camera was, deciding that you were in, so you could figure out where on the screen you're trying to slash at. It's just there's no feedback. There's no, okay, I actually pressed the button. It's all analog, and it's really hard to tell if where you're pressing is right. Mostly because, with analog sticks on controllers, you can at least know, I'm holding it all the way forward. I'm holding it at a certain position. But when you're trying to move in 3D space, it's a lot less accurate. It's really hard to figure out where you are. I don't think that games can get very, very good at all in terms of control from the Kinect or from a lot of the 3D motion controls. Just because of the way it is. You have a lot of ambiguity, and it's really hard to tell if what you're doing is right. As a player, perceiving what you're doing, you know what you're doing, and you're watching the screen, and you're looking for something to happen. We were fussing with the controls, trying to go navigate the Dance Central menus for a while too.
Yeah, we didn't know
that was a really
what did what.
That was another problem, and that's something that motion controls just have. They're really ambiguous, and it's really hard to tell what you're doing, and if it's correct to the game.
Man is not meant to control the screen with his hands.
No, I think buttons are going to be around forever, just because it's the most intuitive way to know that you're doing something and you're going to get a result from it.
It's true.
Unless they develop hard light holograms or something.
Even then, controlling anything in 3D space, I don't think is going to be very good for controlling stuff.
If they did have a hologram, that would be cool though, because you could have the cockpit of your spaceship and push buttons in there. And
I think it would be even better if they actually translated some of the games we have now into something like that. If you had Halo 3 and you actually were the chief, physically and mentally.
Oh.
As well as...
But that's super future tech,
Yeah.
Oh.
But still, if they came out with some kind of three-dimensional gaming where you're actually in the environment rather than using some kind of gamepad.
That's future technology. That's
I mean, why not?
We're gonna get that eventually.
Why not have the first games be re-iterations of the stuff we have?
It's probably what they're going to do, but we just don't care about it right now because it doesn't exist.
They did something like that with for the launch of Battlefield 3. There was this room that you go into. There are these huge screens on the walls in front of you and all around you. I think there were...
I heard of that.
Just huge screens all around you, wall length, 8 feet in height, and you had a gun. You walked on this huge omnidirectional treadmill. The floor was made out of like rollers.
It doesn't.
I think.
But
Yeah.
Doesn't Battlefield 3 support in 3 monetary use?
Yes, it does. But
they
what
had
I'm
a
talking-
projector. They had a projector, and they were projecting
Right.
the.
So why wouldn't they have something like that available where you got?
Well, yeah,
extremely
but-
expensive to set something
Exactly,
like
and
that
it
up.
was just a setup that these people went around looking for people with expertise in different things. They found people with experience with motion, like the trackpads. No, trackpads
Oh.
that were huge and that you could walk on and you would stay in the same position. They had people who they did have some motion capture, and they had cameras set up in the area that were detecting players' movements. They had somebody come in and actually who did lighting, and what they would do is they would take pixels on the screen, and they had these paintball guns set up. And if certain pixels on the screen turned red from you being shot at in game, the paintball guns would fire at you. And they had a lot of stuff like that. And while it's an attempt to be very realistic, it falls flat. If you have an eye for it, it'll fall flat. Just because you just can't get that level of realness. It's going to fall into the uncanny valley. Just because we don't have the technology for it yet.
I would probably like to do that once.
I know, it would be
But
nice to
but-
try it, but it's just, it's
Get an
not going to be
arcade or
perfect.
something. No.
And that's something that's completely obvious until you get the super future technology that really hooks up to your mind and allows you to really experience the world, the 3D game world. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
First of all, we need flying cars. Then we can worry about all that other stuff.
We need something to directly interface with our brain like the Matrix.
Yes.
They do have computers that can do that for handicapped people.
Yeah, I've actually seen one up close that it's literally like a CCD camera. Well, actually, it is a CCD camera. Only what they're using right now is mounted in pairs to glasses or something.
For vision impaired?
Yeah. Well, actually, for the outright blind, but usually it only works with people who were able to see at one point.
You have to have an intact optic nerve, though, and your retina can be destroyed, and they can put an implant in there, and it feeds the digital signal right to your eye nerve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I heard that Google is coming out with a HUD interface sunglasses this year or this month.
I was saying more or less to actually directly interface with the brain in terms of not stimulating your eyesight or optic nerve, but directly pushing information in and out of your brain.
Yeah.
They already do have that, but it's mostly for people who are in a vegetative state. They hook it up to their brains, and they've actually had some success with communicating with people. Their brains are going, but they can only type. They can only type words out on the keyboard. They can't move the mouse yet. They can't do all the other stuff with the computer, but they can at least communicate with words. So they do have some progress, but it's just not as much as it would take to make games out of.
And on that note, we should wrap this up. So, this was the Ogre Podcast. See you next time.